A substantial amount of travel occurs every year during the Thanksgiving holiday. I've seen estimates of about 55 million people traveling this holiday season throughout the country. Unfortunately, this year there's a potential for severe winter storms that could potentially be occurring. J.P. Martin, who's the warning coordinator meteorologist with the National Weather Service, will be joining us now. J.P. is going to provide an overview of the potential weather conditions that may impact us during this pending storm. J.P.?
Well, Tim, I thank you so much for the introduction and for the opportunity to be here. On behalf of all the men and women at the National Weather Service, we wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving. And unfortunately, this time around, it sure looks like not only will you need to get the turkey out, but that snow shovel and that snow blower are going to be necessary to have on hand this coming holiday weekend. I want to start with a satellite picture. Clint, if you can get that up for us, very good, thank you. A major, significant winter storm with significant impacts will be moving through the northern plains this coming holiday weekend. The question now is, who will get what from that winter storm? It'll be very impactful. We're trying to narrow down now just who is going to get what from the storm. This is a satellite image. It's an amazing satellite imagery. It's a new tool the National Weather Service has. It's 1 minute satellite imagery, so an image every 1 minute. And this is from yesterday afternoon into last evening. And this is our storm that's coming. At that time, it was just off the Oregon-California coast. You can see it swirling there in the Pacific. It did make a landfall last night, right about the California-Oregon border on the Pacific coast there. And if we can go to the next satellite image, labeled B, Clint. This is, now we've shifted to the east, so this is centered on the United States. And you can see our storm on the left-hand side of the screen on the west coast. You can see the storm has come ashore last night. Now, what typically happens is as these storms come over the Rockies, the mountains, the terrain actually breaks the storm up a little bit, and you can see it became a little less organized overnight last night. But what's going to happen is now starting today, as that system moves across the Rockies later today, it's going to reorganize over Colorado, and it will intensify. Now, I want to take your attention a little bit to the east coast of the United States, the right-hand half of that satellite image. That storm moving right now through the Great Lakes and into the northeast part of the country is the storm that brought 6 to 12 inches of snow across parts of Nebraska and South Dakota and also into the Twin Cities area over the last 24 hours or so. Kind of a thankful situation there that storm missed the state of North Dakota. We only had a few snow flurries yesterday. So that's that storm on the right side of the screen moving out. And on the left-hand side of the screen is that next storm moving in. And I hope you get a sense of, from this satellite picture, we're now trying to take that storm and we're trying to, the best we can, we're trying to forecast exactly where the center of that storm is going to be on Thursday, on Friday, on Saturday, and Sunday, and so on. So I share that with you in the hopes that you can then appreciate the tremendous challenge that we're up against right now. I want to take you now to a PowerPoint, some slides that I'd like to show you. And again, we wish you a good morning. These are our plumes now. So you're fully aware, I'm sure, that we have many different models that we use at the National Weather Service. And each model, based on the math and science in that model, the calculus and the physics, based on that, the model comes out with a prediction of where the storm is going to go, and then, of course, what the result will be. All right, so not only do we have many different models, but then we take each of those models and we run it out. So we take the model and run it out, then we change the initial condition. So let's say, for example, we raise the temperature 1 degree in the model and we run it out to see what the result is with that change. Then we raise it another degree and run it out, and so on. Then we lower it 1 degree, lower it 2 degrees, and run the model out. We increase the wind and run the model. We increase the pressure and run the model, and so on and so on. So we change, we tweak, we change the initial condition of the model and run it out to see how the results change. So we're going to go across the state, the major cities across the state of North Dakota, and show you some results from these different models. And hopefully, again, for you can appreciate the challenge that we're up against. So this is the expected snowfall for the city of Williston. Up the left-hand side of the screen is the amount of snow, and across the bottom of the screen is the date and time. So you can see as we move forward through time, we have different lines showing up on that image. The blue line, the darker blue line, is the actual model run itself. The actual model run itself. Then each of the light black lines or the gray lines, each of those is we've changed something in the model, we ran it out, and here's the result. So there are about 20 different solutions on there. The dark black line is the average of all those solutions. So what we look for in forecasting the weather with confidence is where there's these lines coming together, where there's a consistent outcome no matter what we do with the model, no matter what we change with the initial condition, we look for the result to be the same. Well, you can see obviously here at Williston, that's not working this time around. The solutions are literally all over the place. With as little as 1 inch of snow at Williston from this storm to as much as 8 inches of snow at Williston. Now the average of those is about 4 inches. But again, you can see that there's no consistency in the result. The lines are all over the place with the result, with the amount of snow, and so our confidence therefore is low. Let's move on to the next slide would be for Minot. Again, the same thing showing up for you. Again, that blue line is the actual model run. Then we have the 20 different results after changing the model, and then the black solid line is the average of all those. Now here we see a little more consistency with amounts maybe from say 2 to 8 inches generally. But you notice that there is one run here, one run up the screen that gives Minot a potential of a foot of snow. Again, that's one of 20 different solutions. So we look for a clustering. Again, we don't really have a good clustering, although in Minot 2 to 8 inches would be the expectation from this guidance, with about maybe 5 inches as the average of all of those. We'll continue to go across the north over to Grand Forks. Again, same thing. We're all over the place with our results, anywhere from 2 inches to 16 inches of snow. The centering on about 10 there at Grand Forks. Again, not to say it's a forecast of 10 inches of snow at Grand Forks, but that's where the average of all these solutions is coming in. We'll move to the southwest part of the state now, to the Dickinson area. Again, not a whole lot of consistency, although some confidence here that at least 6 inches of snow, in other words, no model is forecasting less than 6 inches of snow at Dickinson. So some confidence that Dickinson will have at least 6 inches of snow from the system with a clustering around 8 inches there. Moving towards Bismarck, here's where it's more significant impacts. Again, the lowest of all these runs, the lowest amount that we should expect at Bismarck is about 8 inches of snow with a clustering around 1 foot. But again, some guidance is suggesting we could have 14 inches of snow in the Bismarck area. Moving on to Jamestown. Again, nothing less than 6 inches showing up from these model runs. So we would expect at least 6 inches of snow at Jamestown. And again, the high end there, about 15 inches. A clustering again, about a foot. And then finally in Fargo, again, 6 to 8 inches, nothing showing up, no guidance suggesting there'll be less than that. 6 to 8 inches of snow and a clustering around a foot. So the bottom line from that is that across the northern part of the state, much less snow, much less impact, maybe somewhere from 4 to 6 inches of snow across the north, and across the south, more confidence that there'll be at least 6 inches of snow, maybe more centered around a foot. So at this point, we are not putting out official amount forecasts. They're these big ranges, right? So in other words, several inches across the north to maybe as much as 6 inches of snow across the south to maybe a foot or even a little bit more. This is a probabilistic potential of snowfall of at least 8 inches of snow. Again, it's in line with the north. The chance of getting 8 inches of snow or more across the north is quite low. Less than 40% chance of that happening, whereas across the south, from just east of Dickinson through Bismarck, Mandan, Jamestown, and Fargo, the chance of getting at least 8 inches of snow is more than 70% chance of that happening. Wind with the storm, yeah, we're expecting quite a bit of wind to come in, not until Friday night through Saturday night. But here's the maximum wind gust we expect. So basically in the northwest part of the state, maybe wind as high as 30 miles an hour or so. In the southeast part of the state, or actually the whole eastern third to half of the state, wind gusts as high as 40 miles an hour. So the question becomes on the storm, the timing of the storm. So it looks like today, Wednesday, is a fine day. We have got some sunshine before the storm. We'll start to have clouds coming in late tonight and during the day on Thursday, Thanksgiving Day. And then the first little round of precipitation from the storm comes in on Friday morning. So very early Friday morning, before daybreak, we'll have the first little round of precipitation come in. The problem there is it looks like it could be some freezing rain. So a little bit of snow and the possibility of some freezing rain. That's again getting going probably before daybreak on Friday and continuing throughout the day Friday. I don't think there's going to be a significant amount of snow, an inch or less, and I don't think there'll be a significant amount of freezing rain, but remember that even a little bit of ice, even a little bit of freezing rain can lead to tremendous travel problems. Again, that's on Friday. Then Friday night, colder air starts to work in and all of the precipitation changes to snow. The snow gets heavy on Friday night and through the day on Saturday, even into Saturday night. And again, most significant impacts would be along and south of Interstate 94 and then up the Red River Valley from Fargo up towards the Grand Forks area. Already today, you can see on the west coast and through the Rocky Mountains, there's a lot of winter weather advisories. That's the purple shade. There's a lot of winter storm warnings. That's the pink shade, already posted across the Rockies for this storm. Now here in the Dakotas, we've got winter storm watches. That's the blue area. Across eastern Montana, northeast Wyoming, and into the Dakotas, we have winter storm watches posted for the time period of Friday night through Saturday night when the biggest impact of the storm will be. Now to the east, over towards the Twin Cities, Minneapolis area, that's the storm that's moving out of there right now. They're under winter storm warnings for the 6 to 12 inches of snow that they received over the past 24 hours. And that storm is moving away. There's high wind warnings across Illinois, Iowa, Missouri, and into Indiana and Ohio there with that storm that's moving through there now. So again, to recap here, Friday, we're good travel, I believe, through Thanksgiving Day. I see very little, if any, travel impacts. Friday is when we start to run into some problems with the risk of freezing rain and maybe a little bit of light snow. Again, keeping in mind that even a little freezing rain causes tremendous travel problems. Then Friday night, snow through the day Saturday and Saturday night. Significant snow and wind is possible. Higher chances, the best chances of snow across, of significant snow, I should say, across the southern part of the state and up the Red River Valley. And then on Sunday, conditions begin to improve in the weather. We should even see some sunshine on Sunday.
Great. Thanks so much, JP. Appreciate it. So we'll be turning now to Sean Johnson. Sean is the planning chief for the Homeland Security Division of the Department of Emergency Management. And Sean's going to provide an overview of some of the information regarding what state agencies and emergency managers are doing across the state in preparation for storm activity. Sean?
Okay. Thank you, Tim. Appreciate being here today. This is, of course, the season of gratitude. And despite all the great news that JP just gave us, this is also a great time to talk about and remember all the great partners that we get to work with, among them being the public health, the hospital, the EMS community, of which is all part of a great team. If you want to go to my slideshow, Clint, I'd appreciate that. Okay, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about winter response and generalities here. As we really, everything that we do in the emergency management enterprise, and when I say enterprise, that includes all of our partners, public sector, private sector, non-government organizations, all across the board, everybody who's got to come together to work as one to basically address the issues regardless of hazard or threat that are presented to us. In this case, of course, it's a winter storm. We're going to get into a little of some of those specifics here shortly. But a lot of those cultural aspirations that we see that are from the governor's office really fit within the emergency management enterprise well. I talked about working as one. Everything we do, of course, is focused on our citizens, keeping them safe and secure. And then ultimately, we have to make a difference, often on the worst days of their lives, in order for them to remain safe and secure and to get through the situation that they're facing. In order for us to do that, we have to first really start to define the problem. Lately, we're starting to examine that through the lens of something called community lifelines. Community lifelines are basically those things within the emergency management enterprise that we either need to protect or to restore based on the bad things that come from, say, a winter storm, terrorist attack, whatever it may be. They're really broken down into 7 areas. And they are those things that enable the continuous operation of government functions and also the critical businesses and economic drivers in our communities. Also those things that are essential to human health and safety or economic security. When we're looking at things as an emergency management enterprise within that community lifeline construct, looking to define that problem, but the bottom line is we don't do planning per se for a winter storm. We may have a winter storm annex. We may set up incident action planning specific to a winter storm event. But at the end of the day, what we're really looking at are what are the impacts that we have to address. And a lot of these impacts we have to address across multiple hazards or threats in our community. Here's some good examples of things that come because of winter weather within the state of North Dakota. Everything from search and rescue all the way on the left, all the way on over to impeded travel. Those are big ones that jump out at us. But of course, you all in the health and medical community have unique challenges that can befall your facilities, as well as having to deal with the injuries and deaths that may come from a winter storm. A lot of what these lifelines do is really help us better categorize, loop group the impacts into a logical framework, so then we can address how we're going to tackle the problems that are presented to us. We do that through our core capabilities. They are broken down into 5 mission areas. And how I like to explain these to the audience, whoever I'm presenting to, is these are really the products and services of the emergency management enterprise. You can think of the mission areas at the top, the 5 things there, including response and recovery, as our product lines. Within each of those product lines, we have the specific products that we have to basically back up to the virtual warehouse, load up on the truck, and deliver to a community in need. We narrow these down, of course, when we're framing the problem for a winter response. Not all 32 core capabilities necessarily would come into play, but we are able to focus them down to some key response and recovery ones, such as you see on your screen here. As we look back at those impacts, our next step is really, and what most of our partners are doing at this time, is examining their capability to deliver core capabilities and apply them to the different impacts that could be expected from an event such as what JP was forecasting. So as an example, we have the mass search and rescue operations core capability that will come in to help us address the search and rescue issues. We have on-scene security, infrastructure systems that would come into play also for water outages, power outages, comm outages, etc. If we have to do sheltering, our partners at the Human Services and as well as the Health Department get involved in sheltering operations through mass care. Of course, you all in the public health community know well what you do in the the health and medical field, and the unique challenge, how to address the unique challenges that come because of a winter storm in that area. Logistics and supply chain management is critical to any emergency we face, and those help us address some supply chain issues. Our operational communications folks get very busy at a time like this, increased 911 calls for service, and that's not just for the winter storm. The things like domestic disturbances, heart attacks don't go away. Those things are still happening and being dealt with by our 911 community. And of course, our folks in the DOT and other public works areas are dealing with critical transportation issues and preparing to do so at this time. Some things we have to wait till recovery. A good example is ag impacts. So the means, we talked about the ends being the lifelines, the ways being our core capability delivery. Now how do we get there? We have things called coordinating structures. Those coordinating structures are currently right now ramping up in anticipation of having to deliver the different various core capabilities you see in front of you. A good example is the mass search and rescue, which I'm going to show you in the next slide. We pull together law enforcement agencies at the local and tribal level to work with our Civil Air Patrol partners, Highway Patrol, Guard, and DOT partners to help deliver that core capability as one team, working as one. What that looks like in this example, and we've had to do this in past winter storm events, there may be several clusters of stranded motorists out on the transportation network. We have to assume they may not always be able to have available to them their cell phone communications, or those things may not be working at that time. So in this case, the Civil Air Patrol would be out flying and identifying locations of possible stranded motorists. If they see a stranded motorist or a group of them, they're going to radio back to our partners at State Radio Communications and our Department of Emergency Services, our sister division, who's going to dispatch a task force of Department of Transportation plows, Guard, heavy and four-wheel drive vehicles, as well as Highway Patrol troopers to go out and effect rescue. If there's any medical concerns, we would of course bring in the EMS community at that time. Of course, all this needs synchronization. Some of the key focuses we have right now, review of our emergency operations plans. We do have a winter storm annex that's of course being looked at. Our partners probably also have internal emergency operations plans and winter storm annexes they're reviewing. We're preparing for the possibility of incident action planning. Doesn't mean we're necessarily going to get into that. But no matter what we do, whether we leverage the existing plans we have or we initiate the incident action planning, we're looking at what does that unified command possibly look like. Everything that we do, of course, like you in the medical community, has ICS as the driver for synchronization. Messaging is happening right now. Our partners at the Weather Service, of course, do an outstanding job with that. And we plug into that through our joint information system and resources such as nd.response.gov, which I encourage you to go take a look at if you have a moment today. Another big focus for us right now is much what JP just got done doing. We're assessing the situation and taking those forecasts and translating those into what are the possible actions that we may be called upon to do as a state in order to support local and tribal authorities. At the end of the day, this is what success looks like in our business, what success is going to look like in the storm coming up. We have to have a shared understanding of the problem. That starts with the forecasts that we receive from JP today and a continuing monitoring of those. Then we unify under a incident command system, a unified command structure to approach the problem. And the last thing we do is synchronize the execution of solutions through our core capability delivery with our various partners at all levels of government, as well as the private sector and non-government organizations. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Sean. Well, joining us now is Julie Sickler. She's the Director of the Division of Public Health Emergency Preparedness and Response. Julie's going to be reviewing the preparation steps that we're recommending for public health and medical organizations. Julie?
Thanks, Tim. And I hope the information I'm about to provide to you is information that you've heard over and over again from our agencies and have already taken these things into account. First, your generators. Make sure that those generators have been tested and even load tested recently. And also look at the fuel source and supply that you have for those generators. Do you have enough to get you through the next few days, a week? Is that available to you? How about those contact lists for you and for your staff? Have they been updated, and can you get a hold of those folks if you need to at 2 a.m. on Saturday? All that emergency information. And how is that staff going to get to work with possibly a foot of snow on the ground? Who has the four-wheel drive vehicles? Who has the snowmobiles? Is it possible for staff to put a pool together and pay Mary to come and pick them up and bring them to work one morning or when their shift starts? How about those emergency kits in your vehicles? We hear about those throughout the winter here in North Dakota. Please make sure that those kits are available and in staff's vehicles. I always say walk on the crunchy snow, and this means that hard packed snow that's shiny is going to be so slippery. This is both walking and driving, so try to stay on that crunchy snow. And when you do fall, try to fall on the soft parts, not the elbows. Check your consumable supplies in your facility. How about gowns, gloves, masks? Is there anything that we can support you with? All of those items are out on Han Assets. Make sure and put an order in if you need something. Do you need to harden your facility, and do you have the ability to do that with regards to staff? Do you have food available for staff? Is there bedding or place for staff to lay down during their time with you? And of course, sheltering in place for your residents and others that may be in your facility at the time that's needed. And how do you reach us? If you remember nothing else about what I've said today, please take down our phone number. 24/7, 365. You can reach us at 701-328-2270. If this is not during normal business hours, please listen to the recorded message, because it will give you the instructions for reaching us when we're not here in the office. Thank you. Stay safe.
Thanks, Julie. And just to be clear, when it is an emergency, you'll be instructed to hit a certain number on your pad, and you'll be connected with an actual live person to speaking with. So if it is an emergency, you're not to leave a recording. You'll just hit the appropriate tone, and you'll be talking to a live operator from State Radio. Well, it's time now for the question and answer portion of the program. For those viewing by video, please make sure that your microphones are muted or during the time when you're not speaking, but when it's time to speak, then go ahead and unmute your microphone while someone's speaking. Now, to ask a question, we're going to ask that you turn down the volume on your computer and call us at 866-888-3385. So if you're viewing by webcast or web stream, you're not connected to the video conference, then you call in by phone to ask whatever questions you have. Again, the number is 866-888-3385. The web stream is a few seconds behind the real-time audio, so please listen to the program on your phone, not on your computer. And when calling in with your question, eventually you'll be getting through to, if there are people ahead of you in the queue, you'll be getting through to a message that will tell you that you now have the floor. So the way that you'll raise your hand during that process is to hit star and then pound. That's how you raise your hand to let the system know that you have a question. If you want to withdraw your question, just hit star and pound once again, and that will pull you out. And so again, there may be other callers ahead of you during the question and answer portion while you're waiting on the phone. Just listen to the program until the instructions come over the phone telling you that you now have the floor. When it's your turn, the attendant will tell you that your microphone is unmuted and that you have the floor. So go ahead and ask your question at that point. Now, telephone questions can begin immediately. So again, if you're by computer or web stream, go ahead and dial the number now, get in queue. If you're viewing by video conference, by interactive video, please leave your devices on mute inside of your rooms. I'll be going through the state by regions, and I'll begin with the Fargo area. If you think you're closest to the major 8 cities that JP went through, as I call through each of the cities, you'll then be unmuting your microphone in the video conference rooms and asking a question at that point. And if you're not sure which city you're closest to, don't worry about it. Just pick one and get your question in. So again, leave your phones and your devices muted until you're actually speaking. So let's go ahead and begin the process now. I'm going to start off with the Fargo area and see if anybody has any questions or comments from the Fargo region? If so, go ahead and unmute your video conference unit and ask your question. And while people may be formulating questions at this point, let me just remind you of the phone number to call in. That's 866-888-3385, 866-888-3385. So JP, I'm going to ask a question while people might be formulating their questions. Obviously, this is a special broadcast that we're doing to focus on the public health and the medical community. What would be a reasonable way for this same community, the public health and the medical system, to keep apprised when we're not doing this special broadcast and to keep updated on the daily changes that may be occurring?
That's an excellent question, Tim. The National Weather Service website, and so that is weather.gov/Bismarck for the National Weather Service office in Bismarck. Or you can just type, instead of Bismarck, just BIS. And then for the eastern part of the state, the National Weather Service office in Grand Forks is weather.gov/FGF. Think of Fargo, Grand Forks. If you forget those, just search National Weather Service. The national map will come up, and then you can click on the map for wherever you are in the state of North Dakota, and you'll be taken to the appropriate National Weather Service office. One thing we're doing now on our webpage for the storm is in the upper right-hand corner, there's a yellow banner. It's called a situation report. It's an excellent source of information. It'll summarize the forecast for the whole, on the Bismarck side, for the whole western and central part of the state, and on the Grand Forks National Weather Service website, there you go, it's showing up on the screen now. The upper right-hand corner, that yellow banner, click on that, and a little PowerPoint will open with some slides. Again, Bismarck for the western and central part of the state, the National Weather Service in Grand Forks for the east.
Great, thanks.
Good source of information. And one thing, Tim, if I can add right there is, this is a very dynamic situation. So you should be checking the forecast frequently and expect when you check the forecast that it's going to be just a little different than the forecast you saw 4 or 6 hours ago.
Well, and one of the things that I think that your presentation really brought out is, why that variability exists, the challenges in terms of where the models end up predicting in the range, and obviously the closer to the event, the tighter the hope is that those predictive models become. Is that correct?
Exactly right, and that leads into why we're starting to post watches now, because of all the uncertainty. Once our level of confidence becomes higher, now you'll start to see warnings being issued.
Sure. Well, I am certain I'm going to have turkey during this Thanksgiving, one way or the other. But let me continue on now. Do we have any questions in the Fargo area? Let's move on over to the Jamestown area. Any questions or comments from the Jamestown area? We have Bismarck next. Any questions or comments from Bismarck? And Dickinson is up next. Any questions or comments from the Dickinson area?
Yeah, this southwest here, maybe we missed it, but what direction is the main wind direction going to come from? The southeast, northwest, whatever?
Yeah, good question. It'll start during the day on Thanksgiving and through much of the day on Friday. It'll be a south-southeast wind, in other words, coming from the south and southeast. As the storm pushes through the Central Plains, the wind will switch. So by Friday night into Saturday morning, the wind will then be coming from the north. And speeds will be anywhere close to around 30 miles an hour in the western part of the state, as high as 40 in the east. So I did not mention blizzard. At this point, it is certainly possible. The chance of a blizzard is not zero. And the greatest chance of getting blizzard conditions would be from the south-central part of the state, say the Bismarck-Mandan area, through the southern half of the Red River Valley. Again, that's not forecast at this point to be a blizzard, but it is certainly a possibility.
Great, thanks for that question. Any other questions from the Dickinson area? Well, let's move on over to the Williston area. Any questions or comments from Williston? Let me go ahead and pose a question. Sean, one of the things that I'm curious, much like the question I asked JP in terms of the weather information, how would the best way that you would recommend for the public health and the medical community to keep apprised of not necessarily the medical aspects of whatever response is occurring, but the rest of the response system that you were talking about.
The best thing I can recommend is if you have access to our WebEOC system, to go ahead and have that. Most of us have a couple of screens going on our computers now. Put that on a screen on the side. That'll have a board called Significant Events that you can kind of keep apprised of the things that are happening across the state. The other is, I'll refer back to a Weather Service resource, NWS Chat. If you have access to that, that's something we use quite a bit. And that'll give you the up-to-the-date the watches, warnings, and advisories as they're issued, but also any spot reports that are coming in from the emergency management community. So there's a couple of good resources right there if you have access to them. Otherwise, if you have good contact, and if you don't, this is a great time to initiate that contact with your local or tribal emergency manager.
And
I would plug in with them definitely, and stay apprised in that way, and also share information with them also on what you're doing.
And so if there's not familiarity from the public health and medical community as to who that actually is, where can they get that information from?
You can go to our website at des.nd.gov, and there will be a link to local and tribal emergency managers. If you have your WebEOC access, if that's something you already have, there's also a link to that as well, and I believe we also have some Weather Service. The other great website, of course, is ndresponse.gov, ndresponse all together, and that's got some terrific links, winter storm preparedness, but also if we need to kind of kick up the messaging another notch here, that's where a lot of that's going to go.
Great, thanks, Sean. Well, let's go on and continue to see if we have any questions or comments this time from continuing on with Williston. Any questions or comments there? Let me remind you once again of the call-in number, which is 866-888-3385. That's 866-888-3385. Well, Minot's up next. Let's see if we have any questions or comments from Minot. And hearing none, let's move over to the Devil's Lake area. Any questions or comments from Devil's Lake? Let me just check in really quickly with Julie. And Julie, if a situation is occurring where we have a significant public health and medical response, what would be the expected outreach that would be happening from our Department Operations Center to the public health and medical community? How would those briefings actually occur to talk about specific operations within public health and medical?
Sure, Tim. Much like where many of us are viewing this briefing today, we would send out a health alert message and let them know that we are actually going to be conducting a briefing with all of you, and we would bring you back together much in the same way through our video conferencing systems and through our telephone bridges.
Great. Thanks, Julie. Any questions or comments from the Devil's Lake area? If not, we're going to check in with Grand Forks as the final stop. Any questions or comments from the Grand Forks area? So we're getting prepared to wrap up. Let me just do a final call to see if we have any questions or comments from anywhere in any region or from any phone conversation that might be placed. So I think that we're in good shape in terms of having answered the questions. I do want to thank you for your participation in today's teleconference. That one of the things that we're often asked is to, well, I couldn't make it for the actual time that this webcast and video conference occurred. How can I access it? We do archive the content, and that content is located at www.ndhealth.gov/ET. You'll find the webcasts and the training that we've just done posted there, and so that you can have others access it that were not available at this specific time. Again, I want to thank you for your participation today. Stay safe and have a great holiday weekend.